Not too long ago, I posted a video on a Libertarian quiz and I said, I found the most absurdly over-the-top Libertarian survey I've ever seen, but I'd talk about it later. Well, this is it. And even though the guy says that he's trying to be less leading than the world's shortest political quiz, the fact is he's so far out there that you can't see there from here. So let's take a look at the Libertarian purity test and see just how absurd it really is. Are taxes too high? Well, yes, they are. But that's because the government is trying to be all things to all people, and that's not its job. Is government spending too high? Well, of course it is. The government should be small and efficient, not the money-gulping monster that it's become. So, yes. Are we overregulated? Well, in some things, absolutely, and in others, no. But this is a hard question to answer because it's so utterly simplistic. We do need some regulation to keep food safe and medicines effective, for example, and we don't need the government telling us what grocery bags we can use or what pets we can keep. I'm going to answer yes, but like a lot of questions that are going to come after, it's very simplistic. It's really hard to answer. Are you for free trade? Well, in general, yes. Am I for anarchy in the marketplace? No. Again, a very simplistic question that doesn't warrant a simple yes or no answer. And I'm going to answer yes because for the most part I am, but not in every case. We need some regulation over the marketplace. We need someone making sure the food is safe, the medicine is effective, and the claims made by advertisers are reasonable and accurate. That can't happen under a totally free trade system. Should the minimum wage be abolished? No. Now, while I do agree in general terms that people should be able to trade their labor for any amount that they and their employer find mutually agreeable, I do think that people shouldn't be abused. Therefore, a rock-bottom minimum wage needs to be established below which nobody can get paid. This should not be a living wage, though. It should be for low-skill and low-education workers to get their foot in the door and work their way up. If you're trying to raise a family on a minimum wage job, you screwed up. You've got no business having a family before you can afford to do so. Should rent control be abolished? Well, that depends on what you mean. In general, should landlords be able to charge fair market value for their property? Sure, of course. But when we're talking about low-income renters, specifically who are reliant on the government for their rents, then no. And if you don't like that, don't sign up to be a low-income building. In that instance, you should be subject to rent control because you signed up for it. So again, it depends. Are zoning laws too strict? Once again, it depends on what you're talking about. Should they be able to put a hog rendering plant next door to your house? No. Should they be able to put an adult bookstore next to a nursery school? No. There needs to be some control, but that doesn't mean that all zoning laws are created equal. Sometimes they go too far, and that's something we need to address on a case-by-case basis. Do we spend too much on Medicare? Well, of course we do. The government spends too much on everything. There's very little accountability, and nobody's holding their feet to the fire, making them spend responsibly. There's no question there whatsoever. Do we spend too much on Social Security? Again, anything the government spends money on, they're probably wasting money on. But Social Security is a particular problem because taxpayers pay in for it. But the government has, over the years, stolen that fund, and now we're paying other tax money plus money we borrow from China to pay for things that the taxpayers have already funded. But yes, we do, and that's more of a problem of government run wild than anything else. Should we privatize the post office? Nope. There are some things that the government does that should have no profit motive at all. It should just cover its bills, no more. Now, the post office is being horribly mismanaged, and over time, I think it needs to be just phased out. We do have private companies that can transport packages more cheaply and efficiently than anything the post office does. But regular mail, I think that probably needs to go away, and probably will in the next decade or so. Would school vouchers be an improvement over government schools? That depends on what the school vouchers were for. Private religious schools with no controls? Hell no! Private secular schools that have minimum educational requirements? Maybe. I'd rather see public schools fixed than turning to private schools that will suck tax money away from the schools that actually need it. Should we relax immigration laws? No. God, no. We need to strengthen them and only allow people into this country that are good for the country. I appreciate that people want to come to the supposed land of opportunity, but immigration is for the good of America, not for the good of immigrants. It's great when those goods coincide, but we simply do not need lazy, stupid people bringing dangerous ideologies who only want to soak up American welfare money. Forget that. Would housing vouchers be an improvement over government housing? Depends on how they're done. Again, as with the question on rent control, anybody who signs up to provide government-funded housing, I really don't want them deciding to throw everyone out and rent to someone else because someone with more money comes along. They voluntarily signed up for it. They need to be held accountable for the decision. You'd have to give me more details on what you mean by housing vouchers. Does that mean they'll just pay any amount of money? That would be fiscal suicide. I'd still say yes, even though I'm kind of dubious about the details. Should the government sell off more of the public lands? What kind of land? National parks? No. Things that have no historical significance that they don't need? Okay, sure, why not? But again, there's no details here, so I can't actually answer. And because of that, I'll say no, even though there are lands that I'd be perfectly happy to see sold. Are worker safety regulations too strict? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And here's one of those places where I think a purely free market would fail. It costs companies money to provide safety for their employees. If they were not required to do so, a lot would simply not do it and just hope that people didn't get injured or die. I don't want to see that. So I think that we do need reasonable safety regulations. So as long as they're reasonable, no, I don't think they're too strict. Does drug approval take too long? Sometimes. And you notice I'm doing this for pretty much every question, right? Because these are far too vague to be answered with a yes or no. Drug companies need to show that their drugs actually work and don't have any unreasonable side effects. And it can take years or even decades to make it through clinical trials to prove that it's safe and effective, and sometimes even then, problems still crop up down the road. That's just reality. If we can speed it up without compromising on the safety factor, fine. Show me where we can do that. Otherwise, no. Do you think we spend too much on anti-poverty programs? Well, of course. We spend too much on everything. Yes. Short and sweet for once. Is occupational licensing for doctors, plumbers, and other professions too strict? No. We need to know that our medical professionals know what they're doing, that our construction professionals have some idea of how engineering works, etc. The reason licensing works is to show the consumer that these people have the proper training and education to get the job done effectively and correctly. Does the government spend too much on higher education? Of course they do. And this is especially true now that government student loans have driven up the cost of a college education to absurd levels. The government spends too much on everything. That's always going to be my answer. Does the Federal Reserve have too much discretionary power? Almost all government entities have too much power and not enough oversight, so yes. Should marijuana be legalized? Nope, no drug should. Of course, I'd much rather see this be a societal change and not a legal one, but I see no point in legalizing something for which there's no legitimate, rational, or justified purpose. Anybody who feels the need to inject, ingest, snort, or smoke any illicit substance to feel good about themselves, they're a pathetic human being, and we do not need to make it easier for them. Should all sex between consenting adults be legal, even for money? No. Now, I couldn't care less about prostitution, but this is far too wide. Should consensual cannibalism be legal? Of course not. Should consensual lust murders be legal? How about dissection fantasies? When you start going to extremes, my answer has to be no, but this question doesn't differentiate between simple prostitution and the extremes. So no. Do you believe in freedom of expression for books, newspapers, radio, television, the internet, and so on, even for offensive and unpopular views and subject matters? Absolutely. I believe in freedom of expression for everyone, no matter what they have to say. Free speech is extremely important. Should private clubs have sole authority to select their own members, even if they are discriminatory? That depends upon what basis they're discriminating. On one of the strict scrutiny categories? No. Sorry, no. And I don't think churches should be able to discriminate on the basis of religion either. If you're open to the public or any subset thereof, you follow anti-discrimination laws, period. If you don't like it, don't open a business. Just have your friends over. Are you against national service? No, why would I be, as long as it's voluntary? If someone feels they want to serve their country in the armed forces, more power to them. I don't think that automatically makes them heroes or anything. After all, they chose that life on their own, and they're getting paid for it. But I certainly don't oppose anyone who wants to take any job out there. Are you against the draft? No, not if necessary, although, to be honest, I can't even envision a time where it might ever be necessary again. Now, sometimes the draft has been called for. If it's ever called for again for a valid reason, I wouldn't oppose it, and I damn well expect women to be drafted as well. Does the US intervene too much in other countries? Damn straight it does. That doesn't mean we should just ignore the rest of the planet like a lot of libertarians seem to want, but neither should we pretend to be the planet's policeman. We're just one country among many. We really need to behave as such. Should the military budget be cut? Of course it should. All budgets should be cut. It's hardly even a question. Should the US refuse to pay for the defense of allies that are rich enough to defend themselves? Everyone should pay their own way. And that's why, as I've said, Europe has the money to pay for socialized medicine because the US and other NATO powers fund their defense. If they had to pay their own way, they could never afford extravagant socialist programs. If it has to fight a war, should the US try harder to avoid civilian targets? Now, this is a complicated question and one I think I'm going to make a video on all by itself. But to be honest, so long as we're not purposely targeting civilians, I think we do fine now. In fact, in some situations, I think we try too hard now. So, no. Now we get to part 2, where all questions are worth 3 points each. Should taxes be cut by 50% or more? Should they? Sure. Will they be? Of course not. And I have to look at these questions logically. It's absurd to think that the government is just going to cut 50% of their budget, or actually more than 50% of their budget, just to reduce taxes. But of course, he asks if they should, and I agree they should, so grudgingly, I'll say yes. Should spending be cut by 50% or more? Again, yes it should. Will it? I kind of doubt it. Would you abolish at least half of existing federal regulatory agencies? That's another vague question, but without details, I can't answer. So, no, I wouldn't just arbitrarily pick half of the federal regulatory agencies and get rid of them. Each would have to be objectively looked at and determined if it serves a useful purpose or not. Should we abolish antitrust laws? No way in hell. Monopolies are dangerous, or at least have the potential to be. Look at what's happening at Google right now. They're an effective monopoly online, yet they're using their power to censor what people can see and how people can interact. So, no, not a chance. Should we abolish public schools and university? Now you're starting to get ridiculous, and I think that from here on out, you will start to see the extreme libertarian crazy start to come out. No, we should not abolish public schools and universities. Having an educated populace is a social good. When anyone can teach anything, regardless of how true it is, because they can make a buck at it, that's not a social good. So hell no. Should we abolish welfare? Not until there's no more need for it. Now, I've already said that the government spends way the hell too much money on pretty much everything, but to a certain degree, social welfare programs are necessary, if for nothing else than to catch you when you fall and put you back on your feet again. Now, I agree that many programs don't do that, but that's how it all ought to work. Try again. Should we abolish Social Security? Well, since it's something that the people actually pay for, no! Not unless you want all of the money that's gone into the government black hole to just vanish forever, because you're sure as hell not getting it back. Should we abolish Medicare? If it wasn't necessary anymore, sure, but that's not likely to happen. Should we cut back on it? Maybe. Should we get rid of it altogether before solving the problem that it's supposed to address? Of course not. Should all of the public lands be privatized? Not a chance. We need to protect some lands for future generations, and I honestly don't trust private corporations to do so. They don't exist to provide services at cost. They exist to make a profit. So, no, no, no. Should we privatize sanitation, fire, and other local services? You know, I'm starting to feel like a broken record, but not a chance. And as I've said in other videos, once you privatize these things, they stop being accountable. It becomes the law of whoever's the strongest, and if they don't feel like coming out and putting out your house fire, they don't have to. If they don't feel like picking up your trash, they don't have to. The whole idea is ridiculous. Should immigration laws be abolished? No. They need to be strengthened. The whole open border nonsense is really working out well in Europe, isn't it? Terrorist attacks every week and roving Muslim rape gangs. Yeah, that's really what we want here. The hell with that. Should the FDA and medical licensing be abolished? No, 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 and no. Stop being stupid. Libertarians live in a fantasy world. The planet doesn't work that way. Should all of the Federal Reserve's discretionary powers be eliminated and the monetary base frozen? This is really about where I realized this whole thing was stupid and stopped taking any of it seriously. But this is what extreme libertarians actually believe. Extreme libertarians are idiots. Should we abolish worker safety regulation? No. Stop being stupid. Should the Supreme Court strike down economic regulation as unconstitutional? Define terms. Which specific regulations? Go ahead. Cannot answer without details. No. Should all drugs be legalized for adults? No. All he's doing is asking the same questions he's already asked for more points. Enough already. Should anti-discrimination laws be abolished? No. Why are you so dumb? Should the military budget be cut by at least 75%? No details, no affirmative answer. That's an arbitrary number. No. Should the U.S. withdraw completely from Europe, Asia, and other foreign bases? No. Why would we? That's like saying, should we withdraw from the planet Earth? Libertarian stupid. Is bombing civilians in an enemy country morally equivalent to murder? No. Now, I will go into this in a greater detail at some other time, but you have no idea what murder is, any more than the anti-abortionists do. Okay, last part where he goes full libertarian retard. Strap in, these are worth 5 points. Should all taxes be abolished? Only a complete idiot would ask that. Of course not. Should highways and roads be privatized? That's an absurd question. Hell no, you're an idiot. Should the Fed be abolished and replaced with free banking and privately issued money? No. Should all legislation be replaced by judge-made law, arbitration, and other private rule suppliers? Do I have to answer these? Is all government inherently evil? No, but extreme libertarians are. You're morons! Is the government an unnecessary evil? Sometimes, sometimes not. Depends on how well the people keep the government under control. So, even though I think this guy is a complete idiot, I'll throw him a yes just for fun. Should police be privatized? Been there, done that, been covered, not a chance. Should the courts be privatized? Obviously not. Libertarianism is stupid. Next. Should the law itself be privatized? Someone kill me now, please. Should the state be disarmed and its military disbanded? Should we all ride unicorns and live in a magical happy land? Is it morally permissible to exercise vigilante justice even against government leaders? I can't think of any instances where vigilante justice is ever morally permissible against anyone. So, no. Is all government essentially exploitation of the productive members of society for the benefit of a parasitic ruling elite? No, but most libertarians, especially the extremist variety, they are immature children without a clue how the real world works. Should the state be abolished? No, okay, I'm fine. Of course not. I don't think it's even possible to abolish the state. Humans are an inherently social species that naturally form hierarchies. Reality. Try to find it. Please. Would you call yourself an anarcho-capitalist? I have an IQ above 70, so no, I'm not an anarcho-capitalist. The whole idea is laughable. Only children without any grasp on the real world would ever adopt such a view, and then only until they grow up. Jeez, this is painful. But at least it's over. Alright, on to my results. According to this moron, I'm a softcore libertarian, which is funny because the first time I took this, where I wasn't quite so kind to some of his questions, I got called a progressive. But just look at his table here to just see how absurdly biased this thing is, as if it wasn't already obvious. The world needs more people like you. What? You mean libertarian failures? Because that's what you'd be if you took most of this quiz seriously. Well, that or in an asylum. But this is exactly what extreme libertarians look like. They've got no clue. They've got no idea how reality functions. They just have this wishful thinking and absurd dreams, and it just isn't worth paying any attention to. Because while the American public is pretty dumb, at least they're not dumb enough to pay any attention to libertarian rantings like this. And I suppose we're all lucky, considering some of the other idiotic emotional nonsense that Americans are willing to embrace. I'm really not sure if that should make me happy or sad. Now I'm depressed.
nothing changes.